All right, the new COVID relief bill is I guess, alive and well as the Senate now moves to debate this $1.9 trillion spending bill. Now, here's a little bit more of what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer had to say last night.
Now, we had always hoped that this very important work would be bipartisan. Regrettably, it seems that too many of our Republican colleagues are resorting to the same predictable objections they raise about nearly every proposal supported by a Democrat. It doesn't matter what's in the bill. Everything my colleagues oppose is, quote, a liberal wish list. That's what many of them call it. Well, let me tell you, this bill is not a liberal wish list. This is an American wish list.
Well, joining me now is U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. Senator Blackburn, welcome back to Washington Watch.
It is good to be with you. And I tell you, Chuck Schumer is wrong on this one. The American people want to see COVID relief. And interestingly enough, in this $2 trillion bill, only 9% of it goes to COVID or COVID-related needs. The rest of it is exactly as we've said. 91% of the $2 trillion is the left's wish list. And Tony, it is like Nancy Pelosi is saying, I have to have a pacifier for all of the leftists that are in my conference. I have to have a payoff for all of these lobbyists and these left-leaning groups that helped win the White House and the House and the Senate. So this is what you're getting. It is something that takes care of the people that supported them in their pursuit to have control of Washington, D.C. Earmarks are coming back. You have out-of-control spending, money for the arts. You have a blue state bailout, which is the Biden blue state bailout,
right.
Going to bail out all of these pension funds and this mountain of debt that these poorly managed states have run up.
Yeah, this is one of the selling points for the left is that there's $350 billion going to the states. But when you look at, $50 billion going to New York, $27 billion going to California, what's the rest going to get? Pocket change?
They're not going to get anything at all because these states that have run up these big bills, they've been trying to pay this off. They're losing population. People are leaving states like New York and Connecticut and Massachusetts and Washington State and California and Chicago, Illinois. They're leaving. They're moving to state income tax free states. They're coming to Florida and Texas and Tennessee and places like that. And so they're saying, hey, print some more money. We've got our hands out. Send it to us. We'll take it.
Now, you've made some really good points on what crisis relief, when you have a natural disaster, and you certainly could call, although I think it was a man-made disaster in part when we look at what the coronavirus, where it came from and what it's done. But you've said it needs to be targeted, temporary, and timely. This
Correct.
bill does none of that.
You're exactly right. Back in July, August, September, October, we had bills that would have been targeted, timely, and temporary on the floor. And what did the Democrats do? Every single one of them voted against it. What did they do in the House? They voted against everything that we pushed forward because they wanted people to suffer. Why did they want people to suffer? It was to their political advantage. And Nancy Pelosi even admitted that. How terrible to use people as pawns to win an election. And then once you win, you use them as pawns again to pass $2 trillion in spending. And then you say, oh, yeah, we've got this little tiny bit over here in the corner of this bill. And that is going to go for COVID relief. That's going to go help people that lost their job. That is going to go for more PPP loans. But hey, the rest of this is our money. We're going to bail out our buddies with this.
Senator, I need you to help me understand something because, I just cannot connect the dots. The COVID-19 situation is so dire that we need to spend another almost $2 trillion. Now, that's on top of $4.1 trillion Congress has already allocated and the nearly $3 trillion spent by the Federal Reserve in the actions they've taken. That would be over $9 trillion in total. And the situation is apparently so critical that President Biden called Republican Governor Greg Abbott's actions to open Texas back up and drop the mandatory mask requirement Neanderthal thinking. So if that's the case, why in the middle of this pandemic, which has the government trampling on our constitutional freedoms, has Joe Biden selected Xavier Becerra to head up the federal agency tasked with health care and overseeing this massive response? And this man has no healthcare experience. The only thing he's ever done that could be related to healthcare is sue hospitals.
And sue the Little Sisters of the Poor. True. And fight against religious liberty and vote against religious liberty. And when he was in Congress, he had one of the most pro-abortion voting records of any member of the U.S. House of Representatives. And you're right, he has never had one single day of public health experience. Hasn't worked for a hospital or a healthcare company. He knows nothing about this, but you know what? He is a liberal activist. He is somebody that can be counted on to go as far left as Joe Biden wants to push.
But it's nonsensical. If this crisis is so terrible, we ought to have the best equipped, experienced individual to head up the nation's response to the coronavirus and this pandemic. And that's not what we have in Xavier Becerra.
Totally agree with you. What you have is an activist, attorney general, former member of Congress who is going to come in and manage this $1 trillion budget at HHS. And what are they going to do with this? They're going to make certain that they get Medicaid for all. They're going to make certain that they know more about you than you know about yourself.
Senator, I want to, before we lose you and run out of time here, I want to transition to something else that you have been on for a long time, and that is China. And in particular, you've called the NBA onto the carpet asking about the terms of a new deal that they've cut with CCT, which is a Chinese Communist Party-controlled television.
That's right. And they all of a sudden have cut a deal, and they have these warm, cozy things that they're saying about China TV and the Chinese Communist Party. These are people who are not our friends. They do not wish us well. The NBA is listening to the sound of money talking. They are not thinking about the well-being of the Chinese people or the human rights violations that are being carried out against the Hong Kong freedom fighters or the Tibetans or the Taiwanese, or the genocide that's being committed against the Uyghurs that are being used as slave labor to create some of these products for these sports companies. And then these Uyghurs are being forced into internment camps, and they're faced with having their population just completely annihilated. This is what is taking place. And the NBA, because it's worth about $3 billion a year to them, they're just fine with that. So yes, we want to know the terms of this agreement. We think the NBA needs to know that the U.S. Senate is still watching what they are doing and what their participation is with China and what they are doing in Xinjiang, which is where the Uyghurs are located, and how this slave labor is being used to create some of these products that are licensed to some of these sports companies, whether they're jerseys or tennis shoes or basketball shoes or balls or whatever. We want to know details.
Senator, just one question on that. Is this the same NBA that is preaching social justice to us here in the United States?
Yes, it is.
A little bit of hypocrisy there.
A lot of hypocrisy. And Tony, I have to tell you, people are so fed up with double standards and hypocrisy. They have just about had it because they're seeing it every day.
Yes, yeah.
One set of rules for the left and then censorship and diminishment on the right.
So true. So true. And it is so blatant. Senator Marsha Blackburn, I want to thank you for joining us and thank you for fighting the good fight on Capitol Hill.
You got it. Take care.